Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, Foreign and Defence Ministers of India and the US hold the annual 2+2 ministerial dialogue in New Delhi, discuss bilateral ties and the Indo-Pacific.
Defence remains one of the most important pillars of our bilateral relationship. We need to keep our focus on the important and long-term issues.
The US says Israel agrees to a 4-hour daily pause in fighting in self-defense in northern Gaza to allow civilians to flee to safety. Netanyahu tells a US TV channel that Israel does not plan to reoccupy Gaza, rules out a ceasefire until the Hamas is destroyed. And Portugal to hold a snap election on 10th March, President to dissolve Parliament after budget is passed. New Delhi hosted the 5th edition of the India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue in New Delhi on Friday. Foreign and defence ministers of the two countries took part in the meeting. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said that the India-US bilateral ties have seen a growing convergence of strategic interests and enhanced defence, security and intelligence cooperation.
The India-US bilateral relationship has seen a growing convergence of strategic interests and enhanced defense, security, and intelligence cooperation. Defense remains one of the most important pillars of our bilateral relationship. Your visit to India is at a time when India and US are closer than ever before. In spite of various emerging geopolitical challenges, we need to keep our focus on the important and long-term issues.
U.S. Defense Minister Lloyd says the increasingly strong ties between India and the U.S. gives him hope for the future of the relationship and for their common efforts towards a more secure world.
The strength of our partnership is rooted in the people-to-people ties that are the heart of our long-standing friendship. Together, our diplomats, entrepreneurs, and students are expanding our partnership in new domains, including clean energy, artificial intelligence, and semiconductors. Our increasingly strong ties give us all hope for the future of this partnership and for our common efforts toward a more secure world.
India's Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar said that both countries will undertake a comprehensive overview of strategic defense and security ties besides technology and supply chain collaborations and people-to-people exchanges.
In the 2+2, we will undertake, as we have done before, a comprehensive overview of cross-cutting strategic defense and security ties, technology and supply chain collaborations, and people-to-people exchanges. Our trade is today in excess of $200 billion. FDI is rising in both directions. 270,000 Indian students study in the United States, and we have a diaspora of 4.4 million. A key focus of our discussions today will be the Indo-Pacific region.
Minister Jaishankar said that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the US in June and US President Joe Biden's visit to New Delhi in October have strengthened the India-US ties.
Highlight this year was the Prime Minister's historic state visit to the United States in June, which has truly opened a new chapter in our relationship. President Biden's visit to Delhi in September contributed immensely as well to the positive trajectory of our ties. His support was key to ensuring productive outcomes at the G20 summit. The dialogue today will be an opportunity to advance the vision of our respective leaders, building a forward-looking partnership while we construct a shared global agenda.
And U.S. Foreign Minister Antony Blinken says that India and the U.S. are harnessing the power of innovation to make their economies more resilient. When both countries study, work and collaborate together, the possibilities of progress, he says, are infinite.
We're deepening the remarkable ties between our people, which is really at the heart of everything. Exploring new educational exchanges, even building on what you've already described. Steps to facilitate travel between our countries. Reducing visa wait times. If there's one thing we've learned over the recent decades, it's that when Indians and Americans study together, work together, collaborate together, the possibilities for progress are infinite.
Blinken held a separate meeting with Minister Jaishankar before the 2+2 talks. The two foreign ministers shook hands and greeted each other before heading for the 2+2 ministerial dialogue. The two spoke about further developing the bilateral strategic partnership besides holding discussions on West Asia, the Indo-Pacific and other issues. And my colleague Jessica Thaneja joins us from New Delhi for more on this developing story. Jessica, give us a flavor, if you will, about the India-US 2+2 dialogue.
Well, we're still waiting for the statement to be put out, a joint statement in a few moments from now, Ramesh, as to what all was discussed in the agenda. You heard from the opening remarks from the Defense Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister and their US counterparts of what all could be discussed as spoken about earlier. There's going to be talks about security chains. We will know more elaborate details as to what all has been discussed. Of course, also progress and reviewing the existing foundational pacts that were signed under the 2+2 dialogue many years ago, and they still continue, particularly the COMCASA, the LEMOA and the BECA in 2020. Not to forget the ICET that we've been talking about, something extremely crucial under which the United States agreed for exporting some crucial military hardware to India, particularly the GE jet engine deal with Hull. So we would expect more details to be outlined on that as to what progress is being made on this. Apart from that, artificial intelligence and quantum technology, these are also the spaces that India and US would want to collaborate further, and of course space technology and more collaborations in the domain of space and of course the Indo-Pacific, as we've been talking about, Ramesh.
Indeed, and Jessica, we are told that the ministers devoted an entire session this morning to talks on the Indo-Pacific. And what does that tell you about the significance that both countries attach to this region?
Well, many would say that the United States Indo-Pacific strategy focuses a lot on containing China. Well, that could be one aspect of it, but the other aspect is understanding and realizing that India has become an important strategic partner when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, along with, of course, we already have the Quad, we have America's increased activity is here as well when it comes to establishing the AUKUS as well. So given the kind of pacts that have been signed to increase collaboration in the Indo-Pacific, of course also diversifying supply chains, looking at more collaboration when it comes to semiconductor technology, and as I pointed out, also quantum tech, crucial exchanges of defense information as well. That is something perhaps which dominates the Indo-Pacific strategy. From what we know, there is an Indo-Pacific economic framework as well. That is also likely to dominate the talks, if not completely. Well, in that particular strategy, the United States says that it wants to make supply chains more resilient, again diversifying supply chains from China and looking at India as one of the manufacturing hubs and strengthening the sector, not just in India but many other countries in the region.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Jessica Thaneja in New Delhi, thank you for your inputs. Appreciate it. Right, and staying on this piece of news, during the India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh of India said that the India-US defense relationship has evolved into a strategic partnership characterized by mutual trust.
The India-US defense relationship has evolved into a strategic partnership characterized by mutual trust, shared values, and a growing recognition of common interests in maintaining regional and global security. We increasingly find ourselves in agreement on strategic issues, including countering China's aggression, promoting a free and open Indo-Pacific, and addressing regional security challenges.
He also said that the India and the US share a focus on maritime security in the wider Indo-Pacific region.
We share a focus on maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region, recognizing the criticality of safeguarding vital sea lanes and promoting stability. Our teams are working on the substantive outcomes. Our strategic convergence should guide us to new domains and expand scope of collaboration. We are charting new pathways of cooperation by pursuing a stronger defense industrial engagement, easing of technology restrictions, resilient supply chains in all domains, and maritime security.
And joining me now is Professor Swaran Singh. Professor Singh teaches at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Professor Singh, welcome. If I may start by asking you, Professor, how would you characterize the current state of play in India-US ties?
First thing, Ramesh, that I would like to underline is the fact that there is no sector today in which India and US are not building or have already built partnership. Of course, advanced and critical technologies, defense cooperation, people-to-people relation are coming together in Indo-Pacific are areas that are often highlighted. But it's an overarching relationship where India and United States are working on almost all sectors. Second important thing to underline here is that in India-US relationship, other than the summit meetings, this 2+2 represents the highest level stock-taking and providing strategic direction between two nations. So this is the highest level meeting other than summit meeting. And it is institutionalized, as you mentioned. It is the 5th session that we are having now in New Delhi. So I think in that sense, they are not just going to discuss bilateral areas where they want to build and carry forward their partnership, and strengthen it, but also issues that are topical to the time. And of course, as you understand, President Joe Biden is meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping next week. So what would be the kind of likely strategy that the United States will adopt in their overall understanding of putting certain kind of restraint on China's behavior, particularly in Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific? I'm sure these are issues that are going to be important in their mutual sharing of notes. And of course, they have also an important issue of Israel-Hamas war that is going on. United States foreign policy and defense policy seems to be very, very much focused on that issue right now. And you remember, Ramesh, India is part of the second Quad that Joe Biden had launched, including Israel, India, UAE, and the United States. So in that sense, United States now, the way they engage West Asia or Middle East, they see India as a very important partner. And then same way, of course, Israel sees India as a very important partner now. So I'm sure what India's approach would be on how India would like to see a solution to the ongoing violence in that region would be another area for discussion between these countries.
Professor Singh, now that you have given our viewers an overview of the India-US ties, let me dwell on the specifics of the relationship, if you will, in 4 different baskets, including the Indo-Pacific, the Quad, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, or ICET, and other regional issues. Let me start with the Indo-Pacific, Professor. The Indo-Pacific has acquired a salience of its own for India and the US alike. Is there scope for a more robust India-US partnership in that part of the world? I ask you this because just a few days ago, A U.S. agency called the International Development Finance Corporation committed more than $500 million to support the development of a deep-water shipping container terminal in the port of Colombo in Sri Lanka.
I think that clearly is something that indicates that there is an increasing understanding and trust and mutual kind of sharing of notes between the United States and India when the challenges come to, for example, countries like Sri Lanka, which had been inordinately kind of come under influence of China and its investments and its construction of ports and airports and other infrastructure. And then, of course, because of enormous debt crisis, it had got into a political problem as well. So I think in that sense, in terms of specifics, this investments commitment of United States and Sri Lanka is a very good sign that India and United States are kind of working together in redeeming Sri Lankan, not just economy, but politics as well. But larger Indo-Pacific areas, I think, would also include the carrying forward of Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Initiative that was launched, and India is part and parcel of that compared to some of the other regional economic cooperation partnerships where India is not there. So that is another area where India and United States would like to move forward. And of course, the lingering issue of China's expanding influence in the region and how to counter that, and will be again an issue which would be discussed. In fact, the next week meeting of Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping would have that as an important area of discussion, other than United States concerns about nuclear weapons in United States, commitments to climate change, and so on. So India, in that sense, particularly you see after the G20 summit meeting that saw India and United States working together in building consensus in a whole range of areas, which was the last visit of US President to India.
Right.
And of course, like the online summit meeting of G20 again before end of this month, we'll see all these leaders coming together. So Indo-Pacific, in fact, adds on another very significant element that brings India and United States together, other than several other bilateral and historical partnerships that these two countries have had. I think that regional geopolitics bring these two really closer together. And 2+2 is a reflection of that how they want to really ensure and institutionalize their partnership at the apex level.
Indeed. Professor Singh, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I would have loved to continue this conversation, but I will have to stop here. May I thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Biden says pause in fighting is to enable up to 158 trucks to enter the enclave of Gaza daily. Netanyahu says his country does not seek to govern Gaza but rules out a ceasefire. And the 6th edition of the Paris Peace Forum to be held on Friday.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Now, the White House says Israel agrees to a 4-hour daily pause in northern Gaza fighting to allow civilians to flee. The aid conference coincides with negotiations for a 3-day humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for the release of about a dozen hostages held by Hamas.
As the Israel-Hamas conflict entered its second month, White House on Thursday said that Israel has agreed to pause operations in self-defense in northern Gaza for 4 hours a day. The pauses would allow people to flee along 2 humanitarian corridors and will be announced 3 hours in advance.
There will be 2 humanitarian corridors allowing people to flee the areas of hostilities in the northern part of Gaza. The first such corridor, open between 4 and 5 hours every day for the past few days, has already enabled many thousands of people to reach safer areas. The second route along the coastal road will enable many more thousands to reach safer areas in the south.
US President Joe Biden's administration said that it has secured a second pathway for civilians to flee fighting, and also that humanitarian pauses in Gaza aim to get up 158 trucks daily to increase the flow of food, water, and medicine into the region. The United Nations has said that any halt to fighting between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip for humanitarian purposes would need to be coordinated with the United Nations.
Well, we've just seen the press reports not long ago. How any such halt in the fighting and how it would work for humanitarian purposes would need to be coordinated with the United Nations, especially on the issue of timings and location. And obviously, in order for this to be done safely for humanitarian purposes, it would have to be agreed with all parties to the conflict to be truly effective.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Thursday that his country does not seek to govern Gaza after its war against Hamas, even as the army will continue its offensive until Hamas is eradicated. India once again strongly condemned the horrific attack on Israel, urged the need for zero tolerance for terrorism, and called for immediate and unconditional release of hostages.
And Sarah Coates joins us from Tel Aviv. Sarah, the US has said that Israel has agreed to a pause in fighting. Have we heard from the Israeli side yet?
Hello there, Ramesh. Well, look, there's still a fair lack of clarity on this situation. Hebrew media is reporting, quoting an Israeli senior official close to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that it will go ahead, although we haven't seen or heard any reports on the ground inside the Gaza Strip showing that this is happening. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, came out during an interview last night with Fox News. He said that the fighting continues against the Hamas enemy, but in specific locations for a given period. A few hours here, a few hours there. We want to facilitate a safe passage of civilians away from the zone of fighting. Now, just a little while ago, the IDF also came out to say that tactical local pauses are being implemented, but for a which will be limited in time and in area. Now, we did hear from Palestinians on the ground around 2 hours ago that they got a text message saying that there will be a safe window that will be from 9 a.m., so that's a few hours ago, until 5 p.m. this afternoon. But look, it's still very unclear, as I said. It's not known whether these pauses that were announced by the White House actually mean that there'll be pockets of fighting where it will stop, or whether it just means that, people can go out of their home for a little bit. But it certainly is very unclear at this hour.
Right. And any word yet on the release of more hostages?
Well, look, negotiations are still underway. We can tell you at this hour that the Emir of Qatar is on his way to Egypt to really try and push through these negotiations. Now, this is senior Hamas members arrived in Cairo late last night, Thursday night. These include Ismail Haniyeh and other senior Hamas officials. They're talking with Egyptian military officials there, and certainly one of these things that could be expected to come up in these talks is the hostages. Now, just yesterday, the CIA director, Bill Burns, as well as the head of Israel's Mossad agency and the Prime Minister of Qatar, they held talks in Doha with regards to these hostages. But look, no new information yet. Late last night, Palestinian Islamic Jihad did come out with a video. It released a video of an elderly Israeli woman and a child that appears to be in his teens, early teens. They did appear well. They released a video slamming the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and we were hearing reports coming in that they may be released soon on humanitarian grounds, but there's still been nothing as to yet.
All right, Sarah, thank you. There was Sarah Coates reporting live from Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, Israel says videos released by the Hamas on Thursday of 2 hostages, which was referred to by Sarah there, are a sign of life, but call them a part of their captors' campaign of psychological warfare.
הערב הופץ תיעוד שמראה אות חיים של חנה ויגיל היקרים מתוך רצועת עזה. אנחנו מחבקים אותם ואת המשפחות שלהם ואומרים להם ולכל המשפחות של החטופים, והחטופים הם שומעים אותי. אנחנו לא החמצנו אף הזדמנות ואנחנו לא נחמיץ אף הזדמנות באשר היא להשבת חטופים. צה"ל פועל יחד עם יתר הארגונים הביטחוניים מסביב לשעון במאמץ עליון, מודיעיני, מבצעי, אזרחי, כל...
All right, moving on to other news now. Portugal's President Marcelo Rebello de Souza has called a snap election on the 10th of March. The announcement comes after Socialist Prime Minister Antonio Costa offered his resignation following the arrest of his chief of staff as part of an anti-corruption investigation. Speaking after meeting his consultative body, the Council of State, President Rebello said that the government will function for now, but the election was needed to provide clarity and direction to overcome an unexpected void that surprised and disturbed the Portuguese people.
I have been called to decide on the scenario created by the government, the consequence of the Prime Minister's resignation. I have decided for the dissolution of Parliament and called elections to March 10, 2024.
Both Russia and Ukraine claim to have attacked each other on Thursday. Russia's defense ministry reported that its forces thwarted attacks by the Ukrainian army from multiple directions, while the Ukrainian side said that its forces launched attacks on Russian command posts and signals intelligence facilities. Meanwhile, Ukrainian police officers went door-to-door in Ukraine's Kupiansk satellite town of Vuzhlovoy, trying to convince parents that they should escape the increasing Russian shelling of the area. The Ukrainian government has ordered the evacuation of children from a part of Kupiansk and surrounding areas under intense Russian shelling. Kupiansk remains one of the most active parts of the eastern front line, with Russian troops attempting to encircle and recapture the town. Some 270 children remained in town after the evacuation was ordered on 3rd November. Now, Russia's former President Dmitry Medvedev held a meeting with top Russian military officials at the Alabino training ground near Moscow. Medvedev was shown new military equipment.
In total, since January 1st of this year, about 410,000 people have been hired for the contract. This work to attract military personnel to sign a contract will continue next year. The decision is taken by the President. This work is moving. The growth of military production, military special equipments, means of destruction increased manifold. Our enemy will have to take this into account.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. A deep dive into India-US defense and security cooperation. UK to add India to a list of safe states in order to speed up the process of returning people who have travelled from India illegally. And an Indian project brings joy to people in Sri Lanka looking for affordable housing.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such changemakers.
Watch Changemakers on DD India.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. Foreign and Defence Ministers of India and the US hold the annual 2+2 ministerial dialogue in New Delhi, discuss bilateral ties and the Indo-Pacific. The US says Israel agrees to a 4-hour daily pause in fighting in northern Gaza to allow civilians to flee to safety. And Netanyahu tells a US TV channel that Israel does not plan to reoccupy Gaza, rules out a ceasefire until the Hamas is destroyed. Going back to the top story, the India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has said that the India-US defence relationship has evolved into a strategic partnership characterized by mutual trust. Take a listen.
The India-US defense relationship has evolved into a strategic partnership characterized by mutual trust, shared values, and a growing recognition of common interests in maintaining regional and global security. We increasingly find ourselves in agreement on strategic issues, including countering China's aggression, promoting a free and open Indo-Pacific, and addressing regional security challenges.
For his part, US Defense Minister Lloyd said that India-US ties have made a tremendous stride forward in defense partnership over the past year.
Now, we made tremendous strides forward in our defense partnership over this past year, including the U.S.-India Defense Industrial Cooperation Roadmap. And then we concluded that roadmap during my visit in June. And so in just 5 short months, we've made significant progress on that roadmap, and our operational cooperation is also moving from strength to strength.
And joining me is Captain Alok Bansal. He is the director of India Foundation. It's a privately held think tank headquartered in New Delhi. Captain Bansal, welcome to DD India News Hour. How's the India-US defense and security cooperation coming along?
It has come a long way from the Cold War era when we were arrayed in the different camps. And in fact, now India and US are frequently collaborating in every field. We have been having regular exercises with the US Navy. All 3 services have been having regular exercises with US counterparts. But what is important is that we have signed agreements like LEMOA, COMCASA, BECA, which have made interoperability much easier. And what is important is that the 2 countries which have common aims should be able to operate together in case of a contingency. And what is most significant is that just before this 2+2 dialogue, we have launched something known as IDUX, that is Innovation for Defense Excellence. And this is going to be a path-breaking development, actually, if the brains of India and US come together to evolve and come out with technologies that would bring in excellence in the field of defense. They could come out with cutting-edge weapon systems and sensors. And that would be a great achievement for the 2 countries.
Captain Bansal, you've served in the Indian Navy, and we keep hearing about maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. Now, the Indo-Pacific is a key area of interest to both India and the US. Is there scope for doing more in that part of the world?
Undoubtedly. Indo-Pacific is an arena of interest to both India as well as the US, and we have common interests. Both the countries want to institute a rule-based mechanism for resolving dispute and for governing the trade and commerce in the Indo-Pacific region. And I think it is in this particular arena where the 2 countries have collaborated the most. Our navies have been collaborating for more than decades. So we have been collaborating for a long time, and we have been operating together. We have common goals. We are democracies and we have common interests. And I think it is in the maritime arena that we are sharing intelligence, we are operating together, we are frequently exercising, we are also exercising near other countries' coasts. We both believe in freedom of navigation. We have also been doing freedom of navigation patrols together. And the two countries are also part of Quad, which is also committed to this sort of a free and fair Indo-Pacific where rule-based mechanisms are used to resolve disputes. So I think there is huge collaboration as far as this field is concerned.
Captain Bansal, the White House says India is a key strategic partner. And here I want to touch upon another dimension of the India-US ties. What's been the progress on ramping up defense manufacturing in India? Is India looking to buy more weapon systems from the US or technology transfer from the US?
See, we need to be very clear as far as this is concerned that India had the dubious distinction of being the largest importer of armed equipment, defense equipment. We have been trying to leverage this to set up manufacturing facilities in India, and we hear that a large number of US companies are going to set up shop in India, where they'll be able to produce the same equipment at much lesser a cost, because the cost of production in India is by and large cheaper, because the labor costs are much cheaper as compared to the US. And I think if the two countries have faith and trust in each other, then there can be great development. And that's where I was trying to say that the Indian and the American brains are the best in the world. And I think if they come together, they can come up with technologies, they can come up with new equipment, which will be path-breaking, which will be cutting edge. And we have that feasibility. And I think we are looking at many US companies to come and set up shop and initially produce for Indian consumption. But that leverage can be used to provide equipment to third countries and even to the US.
Right. And now the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, or ICET, Captain Bansal, is barely a year old, but it is already garnering much attention. What does it offer for India? In other words, what's in it for India and the US?
See, till now, a lot of critical technologies we were not sharing because there were certain apprehensions about their misuse. And I think with this, a lot of things are being shared between India and US. And I think we now have access to virtually any and every US equipment. But here I would also like to digress a bit and tell you that one of the very big advantages of this collaboration has been India's biggest defense indigenous production has been Tejas. Tejas Mark 1 and Tejas Mark 2, which we are going to develop. And for these aircraft, we needed engines. And I think one of the big issues that's going to be discussed during this particular deal is import of engines from the United States for these aircraft. And I think there's already a commitment for a certain number of engines, but we need much larger number because we want to speed up the production of these aircraft. So I think that is what we are looking at. So these are the issues that are going to be discussed in this particular conference, and this will be a very, very important facet, because both in the field of defense as well as in external affairs, we need to have collaboration, because our perception of events happening in our vicinity is quite similar, if not exactly the same.
Captain Bansal, pleasure as always to talk to you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Right, moving on to some other news now. Political leaders, business heads and international organizations are all gathering in the French capital for the two-day Paris Peace Forum. The theme of the forum in its 6th edition is Seeking Common Ground in a World of Rivalry. DD India's Rebecca Bundan has more from Paris.
Well, this is a conference that's been called by French President Emmanuel Macron on the sidelines of the Paris Peace Forum. And the President's office has said that the idea is to focus on this critical humanitarian situation that the civilian population in Gaza is facing. We've heard from the United Nations that has talked about the widespread situation that the civilian population is facing in terms of a lack of access to just the basics like food, water, water, energy and medical supplies, and there have been these difficulties, it is said, in those supplies actually getting through to Gaza, given the situation with the conflict between Hamas and Israel. And the idea of this conference is bringing together states, international organizations, donors and NGOs that are active on the ground in Gaza to actually try to mobilize support, mobilize aid, try to get these basics through to Gaza, and also, of course, financial commitment as well as a big part of this. And it's hoping to get some new financial commitments through as part of this conference. So really focusing on the civilian population and trying to get some support through, given the humanitarian situation. Israel representatives are not actually attending, but we do have the Palestinian Prime Minister, of course, the French President himself, the European Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, so NGOs attending, the UN. So there are a lot of big players who will be there at this conference.
Now, as in other places, even in Sri Lanka, housing had posed as a concern for many. As the island nation that witnessed ethnic unrest moved towards peace, it was evident that Sri Lankans had faced challenges in securing decent living conditions. The Indian housing project has brought relief to thousands, with the project entering the fourth phase of providing 10,000 houses, accompanied by a notable threefold increase in unit cost.
Countless many in the island nation of Sri Lanka have faced difficulties in their pursuit of obtaining decent living conditions. Renuka Damayanti is one such Sri Lankan who has faced hardship. Family challenges where her husband left her forced her to work to provide subsistence for her 2 children at a time when she did not have a place to live. The Indian housing project has provided relief to thousands across all the 25 districts in Sri Lanka. Already, close to 50,000 houses have been completed under 3 phases of the project.
I lived with my husband here, but he has left me. I have 2 kids. I had to work outside Sri Lanka as a domestic help. I went to work at a garment factory as well to make ends meet. I am happy I have this home now, and I thank the Indian government. Previously, I stayed at my ancestral home. Later, we built a home in this village after receiving Indian aid. So now, I and my family live happily here. Earlier, I stayed at my mother's home. We had no place to stay. Later, I got this land. I'm very happy now. We now have our own place.
The project that is being executed under an owner-driven model features a support of 5 lakh rupees for the cost of materials. For the 4th phase, the unit cost of a house has been tripled. India provided technical support and financial assistance for the beneficiaries to undertake the construction themselves.
This village project was started on 23rd October 2017 with the aid of Indian government. All the 16 houses are occupied. You might have seen the way they live happily here. As the district manager, I thank the Indian government for this assistance, as Hambantota is a district which has families of very low income.
The 4th phase of Indian housing project was announced in May 2017 by Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his visit to Sri Lanka, in which an additional 10,000 houses would be constructed.
I'm delighted to announce the construction of an additional 10,000 houses in up-country areas under this project.
The foundation stone laying ceremony for the first lot of the 10,000 houses was recently conducted during the visit of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman during the commemoration of the 200 years of arrival of the Indian origin Tamils to Sri Lanka. The Indian housing project has brought smiles into the lives of countless many like Renuka Damayanti. With housing being a basic need, Indian assistance has become a beacon of hope for Sri Lankan people. In addition to the Indian Housing Project, Model Housing Project and Gram Shakti 1 and 2, have benefited people across the island through the life-changing assistance from Indian side. For DD India, Ahmed Moin Faruqi from Hambantota.
The UK government is going to add India to a list of safe states, which would speed up the process of returning people who have travelled from India illegally. With this addition, all asylum claims from Indian nationals who arrive on small boats or illegally on other routes will be deemed inadmissible. There will be no appeals and they will be sent back. A UK Home Ministry statement said that besides India, Georgia is also added to the list of safe states. It noted that the decision will mark another step in the delivery of the Illegal Migration Act 2023 and its plans to stop the boats. The draft legislation was laid in the UK Parliament on Wednesday. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Demand for local products soars in India ahead of Diwali festivities. New Zealand all but into the semi-finals of the Cricket World Cup as Pakistan faces an improbable task. Afghanistan looks to end its Cricket World Cup campaign on a high in its match against South Africa in Ahmedabad.
Which way is the Russia-Ukraine war heading? Has it reached a stalemate? Watch Connecting the Dots at these times, only on DD India.
A platform for the developing world, amplifying the voice of the Global South with a focus on the growing economies, resolving the conflicts, showcasing the culture, tradition, heritage and diversity. Watch Voice of the Global South at these times on DD India.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such changemakers.
Watch Changemakers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Take a look now at some more stories making news around the world. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese signed a groundbreaking pact with Tuvalu. According to the deal, the special visa category will be provided to the citizens of Tuvalu affected by the catastrophic impacts of climate change. Fears among the South Korean citizens is beginning after an outbreak of bed bugs in the country. Authorities have been desperately detecting and exterminating bed bugs for the last 2 weeks as a major disinfection of transportation and public facilities is on the way. The Russian government has told its fuel producers to prepare for the scrapping of all remaining restrictions on the export of diesel and gasoline. Russia, the world's top seaborne exporter of diesel, introduced a ban on fuel exports in September to tackle high domestic prices and shortages. But the restrictions were slightly eased on October the 6th to allow the export of diesel by pipeline, but prevented the export of gasoline. Officials have now said that the ban will be lifted once the domestic market stabilizes. Now, the 5-day-long Festival of Lights begins in India. The markets are flooded with earthen lamps and decorations. People are opting to buy local products, lending a local flavor to the festivities and giving a new boost to the economy as well. DD India's Abhishek Mahajan reports.
Crowded streets, people throng shops to buy lamps, candles, decorative lights. Time to deck up your home. It's Diwali time, India's biggest festival, the Festival of Light. For Prakash Chandra, his spot on the streets, Bhagirath Palace, a local market near iconic Lal Killa, is sacred. Despite comparatively cheaper wholesale price of Chinese products, he chooses to sell Indian-made products on Diwali.
People are going for locally made products more than the Chinese ones. They ask for Indian-made products because quality-wise they are better, and people now are more vocal towards local products.
Not only him, majority of the vendors choose the same path.
People are specifically asking for Indian products, which are made in the country. All these are handmade and locally made.
Awareness for locally made products is real. People in the national capital are opting for handmade, made in India products.
I have always been fond of Indian-made products, and because of us, these people will also be able to celebrate Diwali. I urge people to buy Indian products.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in the latest episode of Mann Ki Baat, once again pushed for local products amid the festive season. He also posted a video on X and shared a link on which people can post selfies with such products or their makers on the Namo application.
I will buy the Indian products and post the selfie on that Namo app. I will take that initiative definitely.
हमारे त्योहारों में हमारी प्राथमिकता हो वोकल फॉर लोकल और हम मिलकर उस सपने को पूरा करें. हमारा सपना है आत्मनिर्भर भारत.
One small step taken by all of us can bring along a big difference. This Diwali, spread light of happiness and be the reason of someone's smile. With cameraman Sharda, this is Abhishek Mahajan in Delhi for DD India.
Rainfall brings a temporary relief from New Delhi's hazardous air quality. The precipitation led to a significant decrease in particulate matter levels in New Delhi on Friday morning. According to data from the Central Pollution Control Board, the air quality index, which represents a 24-hour average, stood at 346 at noon local time. It's a notable improvement from the AQI of more than 450 recorded on Friday. The India Meteorological Department predicts that the maximum temperature for Friday will be around 29 degrees Celsius, accompanied by cloudy skies and the possibility of light rainfall or thunder showers. And following the rains in New Delhi, India's top court noted that prayers to the weather gods possibly influenced the weather. Emphasizing an immediate end to farm fires, the court voiced concerns over dwindling groundwater in the northern state of Punjab, advocating for phasing out paddy cultivation to prevent desertification. With continuous burning of stubble, the city of Bathinda in India's Punjab continues to remain enveloped in smoke. The air quality index in Bathinda remained in the very poor category for the past 2 weeks, with Central Pollution Control Board measuring it above 350 for the majority of the time. And as winter approaches northern India, the states of Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir have started receiving heavy snowfall. Lahore and Spiti districts in Himachal and the Kupwara and Gulmarg regions of Jammu and Kashmir were covered under a white blanket of snow on Friday morning. Right, take a look now at some other stories making news in India. Moody's has retained India's economic growth at 6.7% for 2023, citing the country's remarkable resilience amid a global shutdown. The rating agency, in its global macro outlook 2024-25 reports that India, along with other emerging economies, is well positioned to capture a greater share of global trade flows because of the push from the West to diversify supply chains away from China. India's Home Minister Amit Shah paid tributes at the Martyrs Memorial in ITBP campus in Dehradun on Friday. The Indo-Tibetan Border Police, or the ITBP, is responsible for guarding the 3,488 kilometers of the India-China border. The altitude of ITBP border outposts ranges from 9,000 feet to 18,750 feet, where the temperature dips to minus 45 degrees Celsius. And now to all the news from the world of sport with Mark Lane. Mark, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Ramesh. And let's start with the World Cup. New Zealand returned to winning ways at the World Cup following a 4-match slump as they defeated Sri Lanka by 5 wickets at the Chinnaswamy Stadium on Thursday. Winning the toss, New Zealand opted to bowl first. Trent Boult and Tim Southee tore through the Sri Lankan top order. Then timely blows from Satna bundled out Sri Lanka for 171. The opening batsman Devon Conway and Rachin Ravindra got the 4th place New Zealand chase off 172 of that was their chase. They got a good start. Daryl Mitchell got them close before they crossed the line. That's the finish line in 23.2 overs, with plenty of overs to spare. The victory has left New Zealand on 10 points and in pole position to bag the last semi-final spot to join India, South Africa and Australia. Pakistan will need to beat England by a massive margin to leapfrog New Zealand on net run rate. Well, Afghanistan are facing South Africa currently at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, and Afghanistan won the toss. They elected to bat first. They look to end their campaign on a high. The Afghans are level on points with Pakistan, and so they still have the slimmest of mathematical chances to make it to the top 4 on paper. But their net run rate is so poor that they find themselves in a near impossible situation. For all means and purposes, Afghanistan were knocked out of the World Cup when they ended up on the receiving end of one of the greatest innings of all time in the history of international cricket by Glenn Maxwell. On the other hand, the semis, South Africa are at number 2, so 2 points, 2 in the points table and 12 points. Buvama and company lost their match against India by 243 runs. They will play Australia in the second semi-final at the Eden Gardens. That's happening Thursday. Well, that's about all we can pack in for sports today, Ramesh.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website, ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.